now pronounce the verdict guilty of being a witch.
What?
Hand over the girl.
No, that's impossible.
Objection.
The crystal's glow wanes by the hour. I am Agnes Oblige, servant and vessel to the Crystal of Wind.
And those are the nominees for Best 3DS Game on GameSpot's 2014 Game of the Year Awards. All right, bunch of great games, and I'm feeling the two of you have played all of them. 3DS maniacs, Justin Haywald and Peter Brown.
It's a great system, man. There's a lot of good games out there.
I mean, almost any of these games, I think, could be a winner. They're all just like such wonderful experiences. This has been a great year to be a 3DS gamer.
What I want to talk about first is Bravely Default, because we had a very active discussion downstairs about this one.
Yeah.
Bravely Default is a game that you have sunk something like 120 hours into.
Yeah, just maybe a little bit over 120.
Half of which you seem to really enjoy, and then half of which you weren't so sure about.
Bravely Default definitely has a moment that happens, and some people stop liking the game entirely. It gets very tiresome, and it drags on for a very long time. But the mechanics of the game are really what bring it up, that make it a nominee and make it such a memorable experience. No matter what problems I have with the story, the game itself, the gameplay is something that I know Peter loved a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially this game takes the classic like turn-based, Final Fantasy combat, but it introduces a system where you can sacrifice taking a turn in the present, bank it for later. And in doing so, you guard yourself a little bit, but then you also have the ability to deliver multiple, successive hits in a row, which for some bosses that can heal themselves, it's very important to be able to do that. And so it becomes a game of strategy, and it's very, it's sort of figuring out whether or not it's the right move is something that happens throughout the game.
There's no point in the game at which you can just go on, and you can go on autopilot if you cheat, but if you're playing normally, any monster can beat you at any time.
Yeah, and then it's also got a great job class system that's very reminiscent of Final Fantasy Tactics, where essentially you pick a job class, but then beneath that you can assign abilities from other classes that you've already leveled up and worked within. And then beyond that, just the music and the art and the world are incredible. Like it's this great sort of like aesthetic that we got with some of the Final Fantasy remakes on the DS, but it's been it's grown up now in the 3DS. It's got more performance behind it. And it just looks wonderful. Like, yeah, it's a little cute and you might say childish, but that doesn't mean that it's not expressive and great to look at.
And the writing itself is also just so well done. Like, as much as I had to push myself, once I got to that 40, 50 hour mark, I had to push myself to finish it. But oh my God, I wanted to play the sequel so much, because there's a trailer that plays at the end that makes you want to play the sequel to this game.
Okay, well, you mentioned Final Fantasy a bunch of times there as well. Theatrhythm, not a game I've played. Why do you think it made the nominees list?
So Theatrhythm is the second game in the series, and it's essentially a rhythm game where you tap on the screen, you do little gestures, or you can use buttons, and you're doing this to songs from soundtracks of old Final Fantasy games. So, on the one hand, it's a game built for people who love the series.
Yeah, clearly.
But this music is so good on its own that you don't have to be a fan of the series to appreciate it, I think. You get more out of it if you recognize the characters and the worlds and the songs, but at the same time, like, it's a good rhythm game, it's got great music, an expressive little world, and contrary to, it takes the first game and then adds like a bunch of like little RPG elements on top of it that incentivize you to play even more and make the game more challenging. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of content there too.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes you keep playing it. I mean, it's not just the gameplay, which is similar to the first game, but which was so good. I mean, we haven't gotten another Elite Beat Agents game, which was the high watermark for rhythm games on the DS. This is basically like a spiritual successor in some ways, but with completely new and different modes. But it's those RPG elements and getting to level up your character and having that thing that makes you want to get to know your characters better, or to keep using the same character over and over again.
Yeah, and you can like equip items and stuff. You go through dungeons that have multiple paths that you can revisit with different team members. I mean, there's just a lot there.
2014 also saw the sort of the culmination of two DS fan favorites. Not culmination, the cooperation.
Confrontation.
Collaboration. The hot collabo of Mr. Professor Layton and Mr. Phoenix Wright.
Mr. Professor.
I remember when they announced Phoenix Wright versus Professor Layton, and I thought it was an April Fool's joke. Like, there's no way this game is real. And then I was so excited when it was real, and the game lives up to that hype in so many ways. I mean, it's it's a fun story because it combines that art style of the Layton games and the Phoenix Wright games, which have great cinematics, and gives you a little bit of gameplay of both of them. Because I love the puzzles and I love the story of the Phoenix Wright games, and mashing them up together it's peanut butter and chocolate.
Another fan favorite that returned this year, Super Smash Bros. Not only made it to Wii U, but of course it came out on the 3DS as well.
Yeah, and I think it's like a game that's traditionally reserved for consoles. Considering what they're working with, the 3DS, they pulled it off. Like it's not necessarily the preferred version of the game for people who really like Smash, but just in like a world of its own, it's a great little fighting game on the 3DS that kind of is one of the more impressive games on the system, I think, from a technical level.
And if this had come out at the same time as the Wii U version, there probably would not have been as many people who would buy both. But the fact that they do, you have things that carry over between the versions, like the characters that you create. You can bring your Mii character and the things that you collect, put them onto the Wii U version. It gives you an incentive to play the 3DS version, even now that the Wii U version's out. And I still go back to my 3DS version. There's the Street Pass games that are built into it as well. That I like collecting those things. I like getting the little challenges, which are separate between the two versions of the game. It's something that gives you a reason to keep coming back to it.
And last but certainly not least, a game that's been popular on a bunch of platforms here in the GameSpot office, Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
One of the best platformers of all time. It is just such a great
That's a tall order, Mr. Hayward.
Very tall order.
It is. I would defend this to the death. I know that that Peter does not completely agree with me, and we came to blows in our meeting. But it's just such a lovely game. Like the art style is reminiscent of those 8-bit and Nintendo games, but it adds gameplay and it adds things, of course, you could never do in an NES game.
Yeah, I mean, like we argued about it because we were trying to figure out like what would make the nominees list, but I do think Shovel Knight is a great game, and it incorporates a lot of things from, well, like Mega Man. You've got a little bit of
got some Dark Souls.
Zelda 2. You got Dark Souls in there with the death and rebirth system where you go back to collect your stuff after you die. Kind of like Souls. But yeah, no, I mean, it's got witty writing, great boss battles, great level design. It's a great game. I'm glad it made the list. I'm just glad that Bravely Default also made the list.
Those are 5 great nominees, and we won't have to wait too long to find out who wins. December 12th on GameSpot.com is when we will reveal our 3DS Game of the Year, so make sure you check back to the site then.